We're told that every wolf finds their destiny on their 18th birthday, that the moon goddess blesses her children with fur and fang, with power and pack, with a place in the eternal hierarchy of tooth and claw. We're taught that transformation is birthright, that the shift is proof of worth, that without it, you're nothing. But when you stand naked under 13 full moons, feeling nothing but cold wind on human skin, while your peers run silver through the forest, you learn the devastating truth. The world doesn't just reject the broken. It devours them. My name is Sarah Ashwood, and I am wolfless, not delayed, not dormant, not late blooming, as my father once desperately insisted to the pack elders, his voice cracking with shame I'd never heard before. Just empty. A hollow vessel where a beast should live. A human girl born into a world of predators, who've been taught since birth that humans are prey. For 7 years, I've survived on the edges of the Silverpine Pack, invisible except when they need someone to hurt. I've learned that stories can be armor, when your body offers none. I've learned that words can build walls between you and the world's teeth. I've learned that if you make yourself small enough, sometimes the monsters forget you're there. Almost. But tonight, this 13th moon since my 18th birthday, everything I've learned about survival is about to become worthless. Because tonight, my father has run out of excuses to give them, and the Alpha's collector has come to settle our family's debt. Chapter 1. The Transaction. The knock came at sunset, 3 sharp raps that made my younger sister Lily drop her embroidery hoop. "Don't answer it," she whispered, her wolf gold eyes wide with fear she was still young enough to show. At 16, she'd shifted on her first moon, a beautiful silver wolf that made my father weep with relief. One daughter cursed, one daughter blessed. The scales balanced, he'd probably thought. The pack elders would be satisfied. They weren't. I set down the collection of folk tales I'd been reading, The Girl Who Walked Between Worlds, and rose from my corner of our small cottage. My corner. Always tucked away, always in shadow, as if my wolflessness might be contagious. "It's fine," I lied, smoothing my plain brown dress. I'd learned to dress in colors that didn't draw the eye. Mud, and bark, and stone. Camouflage for the girl who couldn't hide behind fur. "Sarah, you don't have to," my father started, but his voice died as I looked at him. Richard Ashwood had been handsome once, I'd been told. Strong, a respected tracker for the pack. But 7 years of watching his eldest daughter's shame reflect onto his name had carved him hollow. He couldn't meet my eyes anymore. Couldn't bear to see his failure staring back. The knock came again. Harder. I opened the door. The beta stood on our threshold, and he wasn't alone. Beta Garrett was everything an enforcer should be: broad-shouldered, cold-eyed, with the kind of controlled violence that radiated from him like heat from coals. But it was the man beside him who made my stomach drop. Victor Kane, the Alpha's personal collector, the one they sent when diplomacy had failed and consequences were due. "Miss Ashwood," Victor said, his voice smooth as poisoned honey. He was beautiful in the way predators are beautiful: sharp features, dark hair, cruel mouth. His eyes swept over me with the same interest one might show spoiled meat. "May we come in?" It wasn't a request. I stepped aside. They entered like winter wind, bringing the scent of pine and threat. Lily immediately moved behind father, who finally found his spine enough to stand. "Collector Kane," my father said, attempting dignity. "I wasn't expecting, we thought we had until the next moon?" Victor pulled a scroll from his jacket, unrolling it with theatrical precision. "That was before the incident at the northern border. Before your pack's territory was reduced by 30%. Before the Alpha's resources became strained." He let the words hang like nooses. "The Silverpine Pack has called in its outstanding debts," Beta Garrett said flatly. "Your family owes 6 years of unpaid tribute, the equivalent of 1,400 silver marks, plus accumulated interest." My father's face went gray. There's no way I could." "We know," Victor interrupted, still looking at me. "No, not looking. Appraising. Which is why we're here to offer an alternative arrangement." The cottage suddenly felt too small, too warm, like a trap springing shut. "The Alpha has need of servants for the castle," Victor continued. "Specifically, Human servants for the lower levels, the dungeons where we keep the prisoners and the cursed, the places where pack members refuse to work. My father made a sound low in his throat, not a growl he would never dare but close. You're suggesting, I said carefully, that I pay my family's debt with labor? Victor's smile was a blade. Not suggesting, offering. 7 years of service in the castle dungeons, and your family's debt is cleared. Your father keeps his position. Your sister remains unbothered. His eyes flicked to Lily, lingering just long enough to make the threat clear. Everyone wins. Everyone but me. And if I refuse? I asked, though I already knew. Then your father forfeits his position and his home. Your family becomes packless. Omega. Beta Garrett said the word like a curse. And your sister's upcoming presentation to the Alpha as a potential mate becomes complicated. The room tilted. Lily gasped. She's 16. My father growled. The presentation isn't for 2 years. Rules change when debts go unpaid, Victor said pleasantly, but they don't have to. Miss Ashwood, what do you say? Will you serve your pack and clear your family's honor? Honor. As if I'd ever had any to begin with. I looked at my sister, still beautiful, still whole, still blessed by the moon. I looked at my father, who'd loved me once, before I'd become his greatest shame. I looked at the 2 predators in our home, who weren't offering me a choice at all. When do I start? I said. Victor's smile widened. Now. They gave me 10 minutes to pack. I owned so little that I only needed 5. A spare dress, my mother's hairbrush, the book of folk tales. Lily tried to give me her silver moon pendant, crying, but I refused. Silver burned human skin. Another reminder that I'd never belonged. My father stood frozen in the doorway as I shouldered my small bag. Sarah, he finally said, his voice wrecked. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know, I said. And I did. He was sorry I was broken. Sorry I'd ruined everything. Sorry, but not sorry enough to offer himself in my place. The walk to the castle took an hour through forest paths I'd traveled 1,000 times, but never at night. Never escorted by wolves who could tear me apart with a thought. I kept my eyes forward, my breathing steady, my mind locked behind the walls I'd built from stories and spite. The Silver Pine Castle rose from the mountainside like a crown of stone and moonlight, beautiful from a distance. All white marble and silver towers, flags snapping in the wind, windows glowing with warmth and life. But we didn't go to the main entrance. Victor led me around the back, down a narrow path that descended into shadow, down to where the beautiful marble gave way to rough stone, down to where the castle's foundation dug into the mountain's roots, down to the dungeons. The iron door shrieked as Beta Garrett pulled it open. The smell hit me first, damp stone, old blood, something else I couldn't name. Something wrong. Welcome to your new home, Victor said, gesturing into the darkness. The other servants will show you your duties. The work schedule is dawn to dusk, every day. You'll sleep in the servants' quarters, eat servants' portions, speak only when spoken to. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. And whatever you see down here, whatever you hear, you will never speak of to anyone outside these walls. Understood? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Good girl, he said, the words dripping with mockery. Then he and Beta Garrett were gone, the iron door slamming shut behind them. I stood in the darkness, alone, my heart finally allowing itself to pound. This was it. 7 years in the belly of the beast. 7 years serving the pack that had already taken everything from me. I took a breath, adjusted my bag, and stepped forward into the shadows. Somewhere in the darkness ahead, I heard chains rattle. And then, unexpected and terrible, I heard something else. A voice. Deep. Rough. Barely human. Another one, it said from the blackness. Tell me, little human, do you know any good stories? Chapter 2, The Beast in the Dark. 3 things happened in my first 60 seconds in the dungeon. First, my eyes adjusted enough to see that I wasn't in a prison. I was in a corridor, long, carved from living rock, lit by torches that burned with an eerie blue flame. Doors lined both sides, heavy wood reinforced with iron, each with a small barred window at eye level. Second, I realized the voice hadn't come from behind one of those doors. It had come from ahead, from deeper in, where the corridor opened into something larger. Third, I understood with cold certainty that I was expected to answer. "That depends," I said, keeping my voice steady. "On what kind of stories you like." A low sound echoed back, not quite a laugh, but close. "Clever. They usually scream first." "Usually?" I started walking forward, because standing still felt like weakness. My footsteps echoed against stone. "The servants they send down here, the ones who've displeased the Alpha, or who know too much, or who are simply disposable." The voice moved as I did, tracking me. "Though you smell different, you're not Pack." "No," I admitted. "I'm not. Wolfless," he said, and there was something in his tone I couldn't identify. Not pity, not contempt. How unfortunate, or perhaps fortunate, depending on your perspective. The corridor opened into a vast, circular chamber. More blue torches lined the walls, casting dancing shadows across a space that looked less like a dungeon and more like a throne room that had been buried alive. The ceiling soared 30 feet overhead, carved with symbols I didn't recognize. And in the center, I stopped walking. In the center of the chamber was a cage. Not a cell, a cage. 20 feet in diameter, made of silver bars thick as my wrist, inscribed with glowing runes that pulsed like a heartbeat. And inside the cage, in the shadows where the torchlight barely reached, something moved. Something massive. "There you are," the voice said, and now I could place it coming from inside the cage. "Let me see what they've sent me this time." He stepped into the light, and my breath caught. The beast was easily 8 feet tall, his form caught between human and wolf in a way that seemed permanent, frozen. Fur the color of midnight covered his body, muscles coiled beneath like steel cables. His hands ended in claws that looked capable of tearing through stone. His face was a wolf's muzzle, but his eyes were human. Painfully, impossibly human. Amber gold and aware and utterly exhausted. "Well?" he said, his muzzle forming words that should have been impossible. "Aren't you going to run screaming back to the door?" I should have. Every instinct I possessed screamed at me to flee from the predator, to get away from the monster, to save myself. But I'd spent 7 years being prey. 7 years being the monster in everyone else's story. The broken thing, the shameful secret, the daughter who couldn't shift. 7 years learning that monsters weren't always the ones with teeth. "Why would I run?" I said. "You're in a cage." His ears flicked forward, surprise. "You're either very brave or very stupid." "Neither. Just practical." I set my bag down carefully, buying time to think. "You asked if I know any good stories. That suggests you've been here long enough to get bored. Long enough that a servant who can't provide conversation isn't useful to you. And you think you can provide conversation?" He moved closer to the bars, into fuller light, and I saw the scars beneath his fur. Old wounds, layered upon old wounds. Most humans can barely speak in my presence without wetting themselves. Most humans haven't spent 7 years being treated like they're less than animals by people who can turn into them. The words came out harder than I'd intended. "You don't scare me any more than they already do." Silence. Long enough that I wondered if I'd miscalculated, pushed too far, signed my own death warrant. Then, "What's your name, little human?" "Sarah. Sarah Ashwood." "Ashwood." He tested the name like wine. "The Wolfless daughter." "Yes, I've heard of you." The Pack's favorite disappointment. Heat flushed my cheeks. "And what do they call you?" "Many things," he said softly. "None of them kind. But the name I was born with was Theron." "Theron," I repeated. It meant hunter in the old tongue. Ironic, for something caged. "What did you do to deserve this?" His laugh was bitter enough to taste. "Do? I existed. I was born. I was cursed." He gripped the bars, and the runes flared brighter, making him flinch. "These are silver bars inscribed with witch magic. They suppress my strength, burn my skin, keep me trapped in this form, not wolf enough to lose my mind, not human enough to die easily." "How long have you been here?" 5 years, 1,800 and 25 days. Though time moves strangely in this place. Sometimes a day feels like a week. Sometimes a week passes in what feels like hours. 5 years. I tried to imagine it half a decade in a cage. Alone, in constant pain from the silver. No wonder he craved conversation. You didn't answer my first question, Theron said, changing the subject like it hurt too much to continue. Do you know any good stories? I thought of the book in my bag. The folktales I'd memorized, the narratives I'd used as escape, as armor, as the only thing that made me feel less alone. I know hundreds, I said. But I'm supposed to be working. Serving. Whatever it is they sent me here to do. Your duties, a new voice said from behind me, making me spin, are simple. A woman emerged from a side passage I hadn't noticed. Middle-aged, human, with the kind of weariness that soaked into bones. She wore a gray servant's dress and carried a bucket and mop like weapons. You're to clean the chambers, bring the meals, empty the waste buckets, and maintain the torches. She continued in a monotone that suggested she'd given this speech many times before. You do not speak to the prisoner unless spoken to. You do not attempt to free him. You do not question what you see or hear. You do your work and you survive. Understand? Yes, I said. She looked at me properly then, really looked, and something flickered in her eyes. Pity, maybe. Or recognition. I'm Helena. I oversee the dungeon servants. There are 5 of us total. We sleep in shifts in the quarters down the eastern passage. Your shift starts at dawn, ends at dusk. Today you observe. Tomorrow you work. Why are humans used here instead of pack members? I asked. Helena's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. Because pack members can hear him howl at night. Can feel his rage through the pack bond. Can sense what he is. Even caged. It drives them mad within days. She jerked her chin toward Theron. Humans are deaf to such things. We can tolerate his presence. Lucky us, Theron said dryly from his cage. Helena ignored him with the practice of years. Come. I'll show you the quarters. The supply room. Wait, I said. What is he? I mean, I can see he's stuck between forms. But why? What kind of curse does that? Helena's face went carefully blank. Not your concern. She asked me, not you, Theron said, his voice taking on an edge. And since she'll be my only entertainment for the foreseeable future, I'd prefer she understand what she's dealing with. Helena looked like she wanted to argue, but years of conditioning won. She didn't contradict the prisoner. 10 minutes, she said to me. Then I'm collecting you whether you're done talking or not. She left, footsteps echoing away. I turned back to Theron. You were going to tell me about your curse. Was I? He tilted his head, studying me. Why should I share my secrets with a girl I just met? Because I'll be here for 7 years, I said. Because you're bored. Because. I paused, then took a gamble. Because you want someone to know your story, even if it's just the Wolfless girl no one else wanted. His ears flattened against his skull. Direct hit. You're dangerous, he said quietly. I'm unarmed and human. You're the one with claws. Not that kind of dangerous. He moved back into the shadows of his cage, suddenly agitated. You see too much. You'll either die quickly here or become something worse than dead. This place breaks people, Sarah Ashwood. It's designed to. Then it's fortunate I was already broken when I arrived, I said. Silence. Then, barely audible. Fair enough. I waited. The curse, Theron finally said, is complicated. But the simple version is this. I am trapped between 2 forms until I can answer a single riddle. 3 times the riddle must be asked. 3 times I must answer true. Only then can I choose remain beast forever, or become fully human and lose my wolf entirely. What's the riddle? His eyes caught the torchlight, glowing. That's the cruelest part. I don't know. The witch who cursed me said the riddle would present itself when the time was right, that I would know it when I heard it. He laughed, hollow. 5 years, and nothing. Just pain and waiting and slowly going mad. A riddle he didn't know. A curse with no clear path to breaking. and 7 years of my life bound to this place, to him. I know a riddle, I said slowly. My mother taught it to me before she died. She said it was the oldest riddle in the world, the one that predates even the moon goddess. Would you like to hear it? Theron went very still. Yes. I took a breath, reaching back through memory to my mother's voice, her hands braiding my hair, her smile before the sickness took her. What is more powerful than fate? More binding than a mate bond? More enduring than life itself? It can be given but never taken. It can be broken but never destroyed. It weighs nothing but carries everything. What is it? The words hung in the air like smoke. Theron stared at me, his whole body rigid. The torches flickered. Somewhere in the distance, water dripped against stone. That's... he started, his voice strange. That's the first time I felt something shift in the curse, like a lock tumbling. He moved forward again, pressing against the bars despite the way they burned. Ask me again. What? The riddle. Ask me again. Maybe this is it. Maybe I'm what? My heart was pounding now, caught up in his sudden intensity. The one who's supposed to ask it. He was breathing hard, claws gripping the silver bars even as smoke rose from his palms. I don't know the answer. But I felt the curse respond to you. Ask me again. I can't, I said. You said 3 times. If I ask it and you answer wrong, does that count? Does it reset? I don't know the rules. Neither do I, he admitted, deflating. You're right. We can't risk it. He pulled away from the bars, shaking his burned hands. But you'll stay? You'll keep asking me questions, telling me stories? If there's a chance... Sarah. Helena's voice echoed from the passage. Time's up. I grabbed my bag. I'll stay, I said quickly. I'm assigned here. I don't have a choice. Everyone has a choice, Theron said softly. Remember that. I didn't know what to say to that, so I turned and followed Helena's voice back into the labyrinth of stone passages. But as I walked away, I heard him whisper behind me. A promise. I stopped. What? The answer to your riddle. It's a promise, isn't it? I looked back. He was watching me from the shadows of his cage, those impossibly human eyes reflecting blue torchlight. I don't know, I said truthfully. My mother never told me the answer. Then I suppose we'll have to figure it out together, Theron said. If you're brave enough. If I was brave enough. I'd spent 7 years being told I was weak, broken, worthless. 7 years of shame and silence and making myself small. But standing in that dungeon, looking at a cursed beast who'd been caged for asking impossible questions, I felt something shift inside me. Something sharp and fierce and new. I'll see you at dawn, I said. And for the first time in 7 years, I smiled like I meant it. If you've ever felt invisible in a world that demands you be someone else, hit that subscribe button, because Sarah's story is just beginning, and you won't want to miss what happens next. Drop a comment telling me, have you ever been judged for something you couldn't control? Chapter 3. The Nightly Ritual. The servants' quarters were exactly what I expected. A cramped stone room with 6 narrow beds, a single wash basin, and the persistent smell of damp and despair. Helena showed me to an empty cot in the corner, gave me a gray servant's dress identical to hers, and left me with a final warning. Don't get attached to the beast. They all do, at first. Then they learn. Learn what? I asked. But she was already gone. I lay awake that first night, listening to the other servants breathe in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the dungeon, dripping water, rattling chains, and underneath it all, a low vibration I felt more than heard, like a heartbeat, like the mountain itself was alive, like Theron was howling, too low for human ears but loud enough to shake my bones. At dawn, Helena woke me with a rough shake and thrust a bucket of cleaning supplies into my arms. The beast's chamber first, always first, he gets. Difficult if he's made to wait. The other servants, 3 women and 1 elderly man, watched me with hollow eyes as I left. No one offered advice. No one wished me luck. They just looked at me like I was already dead. The walk back to Theron's chamber felt different in daylight. Or what passed for daylight down here, the blue torches burned brighter, revealing details I'd missed in the shadows. Scratches on the walls, Old bloodstains. Names carved into stone by people who'd wanted to be remembered. I stopped at one name, Elena Thorne, 1809 to 1812. 3 years. She'd lasted 3 years before. What? Dying? Going mad? Being released? I kept walking. Theron was awake when I entered his chamber, pacing the perimeter of his cage with the restless energy of a predator. He stopped when he saw me, ears perking forward. "You came back," he said, and there was genuine surprise in his voice. "I told you I would." I set down my bucket, eyeing the chamber. Besides the cage, there was remarkably little a drain in the floor, a table with discarded food trays, a chest I assumed held supplies. Where do I start? The floor, usually. Though I'll warn you, I'm not the tidiest prisoner. His tone was light, but I caught the edge underneath. Self-deprecation as armor. I knew that trick well. I filled my bucket from a pump in the corner, cold water that smelled of minerals and stone. As I knelt to scrub the floor, Theron resumed his pacing. "Tell me something," he said after a moment. "Why aren't you afraid of me?" "I am afraid of you," I said honestly. "You could tear me apart. You're trapped between forms, probably in constant pain, definitely going insane from isolation. You're dangerous in every possible way. And yet you're here, scrubbing my floor, talking to me like I'm a person. Aren't you?" He stopped pacing. "Most people would say no. Most people haven't been treated like monsters themselves." I dunked my brush back in the water. "You're not the only one who's stuck between two worlds, Theron. I've spent 7 years being neither human enough for the humans nor wolf enough for the pack. At least you had a choice once. I never did. Is that supposed to make me feel better? No. It's supposed to explain why I'm not impressed by your self-pity." The words came out sharper than I'd intended, and I braced myself for his anger, for roaring, for violence, for the beast to finally show his teeth. Instead, he laughed. Actually laughed, a rusty, surprised sound like he'd forgotten how. "You're going to be trouble," he said, but he sounded almost pleased. "How old are you, Sarah Ashwood?" 25. "You?" 33. Or I was, when this started. I've lost track of whether I'm aging normally in here. He settled down on his haunches, watching me work. "Tell me about your life before this. What did you do with your days as the Wolfless daughter?" So I told him. About the cottage on the edge of pack territory. About teaching myself to read from my mother's old books. About the way the pack children would throw stones until I learned to take the forest paths instead of the roads. About my father's slow transformation from protective to ashamed. About Lily, beautiful and perfect and everything I wasn't. Theron listened in silence, and when I finished, he said quietly, "They should have protected you. They did what they could. No, they should have fought for you, demanded the pack treat you with respect, found you a place where being human wasn't a curse." His claws scraped against stone. Instead, they let you be tormented for 7 years, and then sold you to pay their debts. I wanted to argue, to defend them, to explain that it was complicated, but the words wouldn't come, because he was right. "You said you were cursed," I said instead, changing the subject. "What happened? Before the curse, I mean. What were you?" His ears flattened. "That's a longer story. I have 7 years. He studied me for a long moment, those amber eyes weighing and measuring. Then he sighed. "I was the king's brother." The brush clattered from my hand into the bucket. "The king," I repeated. "King Aldrich? The Alpha of Silverpine?" "The very same. Though we had different mothers. Mine was a diplomat's daughter. His was the true queen. I was legitimate but not heir. The spare. The backup." His voice went flat. "Until I wasn't." "What does that mean?" "It means I made the mistake of falling in love with someone I shouldn't have. Someone promised to another pack. Someone who was supposed to seal an alliance through marriage." He turned away, facing the far wall of his cage. "When we were discovered, I was given a choice. Watch her die for seducing a prince, or accept punishment in her place." My throat tightened. "So you took the curse." A witch was called. One who specialized in poetic justice. She said I'd been a beast in my heart, choosing love over duty. So I would be a beast in body until I could prove I understood the difference. He laughed bitterly. 5 years later, I still don't know what she meant. And the woman you loved? Married to the other pack's alpha, as planned. Safe, alive, that's all that matters. But the way he said it, hollow, mechanical, told me it mattered very much more than that. I picked up my brush and returned to scrubbing, letting the silence settle. Sometimes, silence was its own kind of conversation. Your turn, Theron said eventually. Tell me a story. One of those folktales you mentioned. So I did. I told him about the girl who traded her voice for legs, and how she learned to speak in other ways. About the boy who planted beans and found a giant and learned that climbing up sometimes means falling down. About the princess who slept for 100 years and woke to find the world had moved on without her. Theron listened like each word was water in a desert. When I finished the last story, he said, "You tell them differently than I've heard them before. You change the endings." "I change them to make sense," I said. "The original endings are all about being rescued or finding true love or magic solving everything. But that's not how life works. People have to save themselves. Love isn't magic, and sometimes the happy ending is just surviving." That's a grim philosophy. That's a realistic philosophy. I stood, gathering my supplies. My knees ached from kneeling on stone. Fairy tales are fine for children, but we're not children anymore. No. Theron agreed softly. We're not. Helena appeared in the doorway then, right on schedule. Time's up. The beast needs to eat, and you have other duties. As I followed her out, Theron called after me. Sarah? Thank you, for the stories. I looked back. He was standing at the bars of his cage again, and in the blue torchlight, he looked less like a monster, and more like a man who'd forgotten what it felt like to be treated like one. Same time tomorrow? I said. I'll be here, he replied dryly. I'm not going anywhere. The days fell into a rhythm. Dawn, cleaned Theron's chamber while he asked me questions about the world outside, about books I'd read, songs I'd heard, gossip from the pack. Anything to remind him there was a world beyond his cage. Midday, other duties. Scrubbing the corridor floors, polishing the silver bars of empty cells, maintaining the blue torches that never seemed to run out of fuel. Helena taught me the work with grim efficiency, and I learned quickly that questions about the dungeon's purpose went unanswered. Dusk. Deliver Theron's dinner, always raw meat, always bloody, always served on a silver platter that forced him to hurt himself to eat. I started bringing him water in a wooden cup, instead of the silver one they provided. Small rebellion, but it felt important. Night. Lie awake, listening to him howl, and wondering what it meant that I was starting to understand the sound, starting to hear words in the wordless cry. Lonely, angry, desperate, afraid. By the end of the first week, the other servants had stopped looking at me like I was doomed. Instead, they looked at me with something worse. Pity. You're getting attached, Helena said one night as we ate our meager dinner. I can see it. I'm being kind, I corrected. There's a difference. No, there isn't. Not down here. She lowered her voice. Listen to me, girl. That thing in the cage isn't the king's brother anymore. It's a beast wearing his memories. And the kindest thing you can do for both of you is remember that. But I couldn't. Because when Theron asked me about my favorite book, he listened to every word like it mattered. When I told him about the time I'd tried to teach myself to shift by reading old texts and meditating under full moons, he didn't laugh. He just said, "That must have taken courage. No one had ever called me courageous before." On the 10th night, everything changed. I brought Theron his dinner as usual, a haunch of venison, still steaming. He was lying in the center of his cage, unmoving, and for a heart-stopping moment I thought he was dead. Theron? I set the platter down carefully. He stirred, slowly, painfully. Bad day, he managed. The silver, it's getting worse. I looked closer, and saw what I'd missed in the shadows. His hands and feet were burned, blistered, weeping. The runes on the bars pulsed brighter than usual. What happened? I got angry. Tried to break out. Stupid. He closed his eyes. The curse punishes attempts to escape. Burns hotter for a day or two. You need medicine, bandages, something. There's nothing. Trust me. I've tried. He struggled to sit up, failed, slumped back down. Just talk to me. Tell me something. Anything. Help me forget the pain. So I sat on the cold stone floor outside his cage and talked. I told him about my mother, who died when I was 15. About how she used to say that some people were born with fur and some with feathers and some with neither, but that didn't make any of them less valuable. About how she'd believed I was special, not broken. She sounds wise, Theron said, his voice tight with pain. She was wrong, I said. About me being special. But she believed it so completely that sometimes I almost believed it too. Maybe she wasn't wrong. Maybe she just saw something you can't. Like what? He opened his eyes, those human eyes in that beast's face. Like the fact that you're sitting here, keeping company with a monster, when you could be anywhere else. Like the fact that you've survived 7 years of cruelty without becoming cruel yourself. Like the fact that… He stopped, something shifting in his expression. What? I asked. Ask me the riddle again, he said suddenly. The one about promises. My heart stuttered. Theron, we agreed. I know what we agreed. But I've been thinking about it. About the words. About what my curse requires. He pulled himself up to sitting, ignoring the way the movement made him hiss with pain. 3 times the riddle must be asked. 3 times I must answer true. What if it doesn't matter if I get it wrong? What if the asking itself is what matters? That's a huge risk. Everything is a risk. He moved closer to the bars, close enough that I could see the individual scars beneath his fur. Please, Sarah. You felt it too, didn't you? That first night? The way the curse shifted when you asked it? I had. I'd felt something twist in the air. Something ancient and powerful recognizing itself. If I ask it and you answer wrong, we might never get another chance, I warned. Then I'll have to answer right. He held my gaze. Trust me. Trust. Such a strange word between a prisoner and his keeper. Between a beast and a human. Between 2 people who'd been broken by the same world in different ways. But looking at him, really looking at him, past the fur and the claws and the curse, I saw something I recognized. Someone who'd been thrown away, locked up, told he was worthless. Someone who'd survived anyway. Someone like me. All right, I said. But not tonight. You're in pain. You're not thinking clearly. Tomorrow night, after you've rested. Then I'll ask it again. Relief flooded his face. Tomorrow night, I agreed. I stayed with him until his breathing steadied, until the worst of the pain seemed to pass. Then I gathered the untouched dinner he couldn't eat in his condition and headed back to the servants' quarters. Helena was waiting by my cot. The beast is requesting something from you, she said flatly. Something beyond your normal duties. I didn't ask how she knew. The dungeon had ears. He wants to break his curse, I said. Is that forbidden? No, but it's foolish. She crossed her arms. Sarah, listen to me. I've been here for 12 years. I've seen 4 different prisoners in that cage. 3 of them had curses too. Do you know how many of them broke free? None? None. Because curses aren't puzzles to be solved. They're punishments designed by people who know exactly how to make them unbreakable. Her voice softened, just slightly. You're going to get his hopes up, and when it fails, and it will fail, he's going to blame you. Or worse, you're going to blame yourself. I have to try, I said. Why? What is he to you? I thought about how to answer that. About the stories we'd traded, and the silences we'd shared, and the way he looked at me like I was a person, not a problem. He's the only one who's asked me what I want, I finally said. In 7 years of being invisible, he's the only one who's seen me. Helena's expression went complicated, sad and knowing and resigned all at once. Then I hope you're both ready for what comes next, she said. Because once you start down this path, there's no going back. She left me alone with that warning, and I lay in my cot staring at the stone ceiling, wondering if she was right. Wondering if I cared. Tomorrow night, I would ask the riddle again. Tomorrow night, We would find out if a broken girl and a cursed beast could somehow fix each other. Or if we'd just break more. Chapter 4. The second question. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Theron's burned hands, heard his voice asking me to trust him, felt the weight of a decision I didn't fully understand pressing down on my chest. What if this was all some elaborate game? What if the curse was designed to trap not just him, but anyone foolish enough to try to help? What if asking the riddle again made things worse, instead of better? But then I remembered the way the curse had shifted when I'd first spoken those words. The way reality itself had seemed to bend, just for a moment. Something had recognized something. Maybe Helena was right. Maybe curses were designed to be unbreakable. Or maybe they just needed the right person to ask the right question. At dawn, I went through my duties in a fog, scrubbing floors I'd already scrubbed, polishing silver that was already bright. The other servants gave me a wide berth, like they could smell my nervous energy and wanted no part of it. When I finally entered Theron's chamber, he was waiting at the bars. "You came," he said, and I heard the relief beneath the words. He'd been afraid I'd changed my mind. I said I would. I set down my bucket but made no move to start cleaning. "How are your hands?" He held them up, still raw, still blistered, but healing with the supernatural speed of shifter blood. "Better. I'll survive. I always do." The bitter acceptance in those last 3 words made my chest ache. "Theron, before we do this, I need to understand something." I moved closer to the cage, close enough to see the individual runes glowing on the silver bars. "You said 3 times the riddle must be asked, 3 times you must answer true. What happens if you answer wrong? Does the curse get stronger? Does it hurt you?" "I don't know," he admitted. The witch never specified, just said that when the 3 askings were complete, I would be free to choose my form, all beast, or no beast at all. "That's a terrible curse," I said. "Lose your wolf entirely or lose your humanity. How is that a choice?" "It's punishment disguised as mercy. The witch's specialty." He tilted his head, studying me. "You're having second thoughts." "I'm having all the thoughts." I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold, despite the warm dungeon air. What if I'm not the one who's supposed to ask? What if there's someone else? Someone you loved? Someone— "There's no one else," Theron interrupted. "Mira moved on years ago. Even if she remembered me, she wouldn't come here. Couldn't come here. She's bound to another pack, another alpha. The alliance my sacrifice was meant to protect. But surely someone your brother, the king. Aldrich?" Theron's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "My brother is the one who arranged this cage. Who hired the witch. Who decided that cursing me was easier than defending me to the alliance." He pushed away from the bars, pacing. "No one is coming to save me, Sarah. No one except, apparently, the wolfless girl who showed up by accident. I didn't show up by accident. I was sold here. Same difference. You're here. You asked the riddle." The curse responded. He stopped pacing, facing me fully. "I know it's a risk. I know you're afraid. But I've been here 5 years, and you're the first person, the first anything that's made the curse react. That has to mean something." It did mean something. I just wasn't sure what. I thought about the original riddle my mother had taught me. What is more powerful than fate? More binding than a mate bond? More enduring than life itself? At the time, I'd thought it was just a game, a pretty puzzle to turn over in my mind during long, lonely nights. But what if it had been more? What if my mother, who'd always insisted I was special despite all evidence to the contrary, had given me a key to something I didn't understand yet? "All right," I said finally. "Tonight, after my duties are done, I'll come back and ask it properly. Thank you." The gratitude in his voice was almost painful. "Sarah, whatever happens, thank you for trying." The day crawled by like a wounded animal. I scrubbed the same section of corridor 3 times before Helena snapped at me to focus. I dropped a bucket of water and spent 20 minutes cleaning up the mess. I burned my hand on a torch and barely felt it. By the time dusk came and I delivered Theron's dinner, my nerves were scraped raw. "Eat first," I told him, setting down the platter. "You need your strength." He looked at the raw meat with distaste, a very human expression on his beast's face, but obeyed. I turned away while he ate, giving him privacy for something that was clearly humiliating. The sounds of tearing flesh and breaking bone echoed in the chamber. When he finished, I heard him washing his muzzle in the water basin in his cage. Then, "I'm ready." I turned back. He'd positioned himself in the center of his cage, sitting cross-legged like he was meditating. The blue torchlight cast strange shadows across his fur, making him look almost ethereal. "Before I ask," I said, "I need to know, do you have an answer this time? Or are we just hoping?" "I have a theory," he said. "Based on everything you've told me about yourself. About why you're here. About what you've survived. That's not reassuring. Nothing about this is reassuring." He met my eyes. "Ask me, Sarah. Please." I took a breath, centering myself the way my mother had taught me, feet planted, spine straight, mind clear. Then I spoke the words that had lived in my memory for 10 years. What is more powerful than fate? More binding than a mate bond? More enduring than life itself? It can be given but never taken. It can be broken but never destroyed. It weighs nothing but carries everything. What is it? The air in the chamber changed instantly. The torches flared brighter, then dimmed. The runes on Theron's cage pulsed once, twice, 3 times in rapid succession. And I felt it again, that sense of something ancient and aware turning its attention toward us. Theron's whole body went rigid. "I feel it," he whispered. "The curse is listening." "Then, answer," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Answer, true." He closed his eyes, took a breath, and spoke. "The answer is a promise." Silence. The torches flickered but didn't change. The runes pulsed but didn't fade. The air pressure in the chamber shifted, making my ears pop. Then, slowly, one of the runes on the silver bars cracked. Not much, just a hairline fracture, barely visible. But it was there. Real. Proof that something had happened. Theron opened his eyes, staring at the damaged rune in disbelief. It worked. It actually... The rune flared suddenly, blindingly bright, and Theron screamed. I lunged forward without thinking, reaching for the bars to what? Pull them apart? Break them open? It was instinct, not plan. "Don't touch them," Theron gasped, writhing. "The curse is it's changing." His body convulsed, muscles spasming under his fur. For a terrifying moment, I thought he was dying. That we'd triggered something worse than the original curse. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Theron collapsed onto his side, panting. The rune had stopped glowing. The crack remained, but nothing else had changed. "Are you all right?" I dropped to my knees outside the cage. "Theron, talk to me." "I'm alive." He slowly pushed himself up to sitting. That was the curse responding, acknowledging the answer. But he looked at his hands, his body, still trapped in the same half-shifted form. "I'm still like this." "You said 3 times, I reminded him, relief making me almost giddy. 3 askings, 3 answers. We've only done 2. Right, of course." He touched the cracked rune gently, wonder in his voice. 5 years of nothing, and now this. Because of you, because of us, I corrected. I asked, but you answered. We did this together. He looked at me then with an expression I couldn't quite read. Something warm and complicated and a little bit afraid. "Sarah," he said slowly, "do you understand what a promise is? Of course, it's a vow. A commitment to do something or be something. It's more than that." He moved closer to the bars, careful not to touch them. In the old magic, before the pacts, before the hierarchies, a promise was sacred. More binding than blood, more powerful than any curse. Because a promise is made with full knowledge and full choice, it's the only magic that requires both parties to consent. Understanding crashed into me like a wave. The curse is about promises. About you breaking one. Or keeping one, he said softly. I promised Mira I'd protect her, even if it cost me everything. I kept that promise, but in doing so, I broke my promise to my pack, to my brother, to the Alliance. The witch's curse is forcing me to understand the weight of what I did, That's not fair, I said fiercely. You shouldn't have had to choose between love and duty. That's a false choice. Maybe, but it's the choice I made. He settled back, exhaustion catching up with him. The question is, what choice will I make when the third asking comes? Full beast, or no beast at all? Monster or human? Alone forever or powerless forever? Those aren't your only options. Aren't they? His voice was bitter again. Even if the curse breaks, even if I'm freed, where would I go? My brother won't take me back. The pack won't accept me. Mira has moved on. I have nothing and no one. You have me, I said before I could stop myself. Theron went very still. What? Heat flooded my face. I just meant we're friends now, aren't we? I wouldn't just leave you alone after all this. That would be... friends. He repeated. And something in his tone made me look up. He was watching me with those amber eyes, and there was something in them I'd never seen before. Something that made my breath catch and my pulse quicken, and my traitorous heart do something very, very stupid. Yes, I said firmly, forcing the word out. Friends. That's all. Of course, he agreed, but his voice was gentle. Friends. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken things heavy between us. Finally, I stood. I should go. Helena will be looking for me. And you need to rest. That curse reaction looked like it hurt. It did, but it was worth it. He tilted his head. Tomorrow? Tomorrow, I confirmed. Same time, same questions, same terrible jokes. My jokes aren't terrible. Ah, your jokes are objectively terrible. A child could write better jokes. A rock could write better jokes. Now you're just being cruel. But he was smiling, or as close to smiling as his muzzle would allow, and I realized with a start that I was smiling too. That somewhere in the past 2 weeks, this cursed beast in his silver cage had become the best part of my day. That was dangerous. Helena had warned me about getting attached, about caring too much, about confusing kindness with something more. But as I walked back to the servants' quarters, I couldn't bring myself to regret it. For 7 years, I'd been invisible, worthless, broken. And then a beast in a cage had looked at me and seen something else entirely. That was worth any risk, even if it destroyed us both. The next morning, Helena pulled me aside before my duties began. The king wants to see you, she said flatly. My blood turned to ice. What? Why? He doesn't explain himself to servants, just said to bring the girl who's been talking to his brother. Her expression was grim. Whatever you've been doing with the beast, the king knows about it, and he's not pleased. Of course there were eyes and ears in the dungeon. Of course someone had reported our conversations, our growing friendship, our attempt to break the curse. I'd been naive to think we were alone down here. What does he want with me? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. I don't know, but Sarah? Helena gripped my arm, her fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Be careful. King Aldrich is not his brother. He doesn't value kindness or stories, or any of the things you've been giving to the beast. He values control. And right now, you're threatening that. I'm not threatening anything. I'm just trying to free the one person the king specifically wanted caged. She released my arm. Think about that before you speak to him. Think about what happens to people who threaten a king's plans. She left me there in the corridor, heart pounding, mind racing. The king. I was about to meet the king. The man who'd cursed his own brother. The man who'd built this dungeon and filled it with prisoners. The man who held my life and Theron's in his clawed hands. I thought about running. About refusing. About telling Helena I was sick, or scared, or simply unwilling. But then I thought about Theron, waiting in his cage for me to come back. Waiting for the third asking that might finally set him free. If I ran now, I'd be abandoning him. Breaking the promise I hadn't realized I'd made. So I straightened my spine, lifted my chin, and followed Helena up the stairs, up from the dungeon, up from the darkness, up toward whatever judgment awaited me in the light. The king was waiting, and nothing would ever be the same. Chapter 5. The King's Game. The walk from the dungeon to the king's chambers felt like climbing out of one world and into another. The rough stone gave way to polished marble. The blue torchlight transformed into golden chandeliers. The smell of damp and despair faded, replaced by incense and expensive wine. I'd never been in this part of the castle, never been allowed. Helena led me through corridors lined with portraits of past alphas, their painted eyes following our progress. Servants in fine livery hurried past, barely sparing us a glance. Everything was beautiful, pristine, perfect. Everything except me, still wearing my gray servant's dress, still smelling of dungeon water and stone. We stopped before massive oak doors carved with wolves mid-hunt. 2 guards stood at attention, both huge, both armed, both watching me like I was a threat that needed neutralizing. "The girl," Helena said simply. One guard knocked 3 sharp raps, then pushed the door open. "Wait here," Helena told me. "And remember what I said. Control your tongue, control your fate." Then she was gone, and I was alone, facing a room that screamed power with every detail. The king's study was enormous, 30 feet high, lined with books and maps and weapons mounted on walls. A fireplace big enough to roast a whole deer burned at one end, and at the room's center, behind a desk made from a single massive piece of timber, sat the king. King Aldrich looked nothing like his brother. Where Theron even cursed had warmth in his eyes, Aldrich had ice. Where Theron's features suggested kindness buried under pain, Aldrich suggested cruelty refined to an art. He was handsome in the way a blade is handsome, sharp, cold, designed to cut, and he was fully human. No fur, no claws, no sign of the beast that lived beneath his skin. "The Wolfless girl," he said, not looking up from the document he was reading. His voice was smooth, cultured, utterly devoid of warmth. "Sarah Ashwood, daughter of Richard Ashwood, disgraced tracker. Sister to Lily Ashwood, potential breeding stock, sold to pay family debts." He glanced up then, pale gray eyes sweeping over me. "Unremarkable in every way except one, you've managed to capture my brother's attention." I said nothing. Helena's warning echoed in my mind. "Control your tongue. You're wondering why I summoned you," Aldrich continued, setting down his document. "Wondering if you're in trouble. Wondering if I'm going to punish you for fraternizing with a prisoner." He stood, moving around his desk with the fluid grace of a predator. "The answer is no. I'm not going to punish you." Relief tried to flood through me, but something in his tone stopped it cold. "You're going to do something for me instead," he said. "A simple task, one that will benefit us both." "What task?" The words escaped before I could stop them. Aldrich smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "My brother believes you're his salvation, his friend, his hope for breaking the curse." He circled closer, and every instinct screamed at me to back away. I held my ground. "He's become quite attached to you in just 2 weeks. Remarkable, really. 5 years of isolation, and suddenly a wolfless servant girl is all he talks about." "He talks about many things," I said carefully. "Stories, books, philosophy. He talks about you," Aldrich interrupted. "About how brave you are. How clever. How you see him as a person, not a monster." He stopped directly in front of me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. "He's falling in love with you, girl. Or something close enough to it." My heart stopped. "That's not, we're just, don't lie to me. I have ears everywhere in that dungeon. I know about the riddle. I know about the cracked rune. I know you've asked it twice now." His expression hardened. "And I know you're planning to ask it a 3rd time." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The king knew everything. "Here's what's going to happen," Aldrich said, his voice dropping to something almost conversational. "You're going to go back down to that dungeon. You're going to continue being kind to my brother. You're going to ask the riddle a 3rd time, and he's going to answer." "I don't understand. You want me to help break the curse?" "No." His smile widened. "I want you to help me understand it. You see, the witch who cursed Theron was very specific about the conditions. 3 askings, 3 answers, then a choice between forms. But she never specified what happens if the one asking the riddle is compromised." Dread crystallized in my stomach. "Compromised how?" "By being in my employ. By being my spy. By reporting back to me everything my brother says and does." Aldrich returned to his desk, pulling out a scroll. You're going to sign a contract, Sarah Ashwood. One that officially makes you my agent within the dungeon. And in exchange, your family's debt will be forgiven immediately. Your father will be restored to his position. Your sister will be presented to me as planned, and I promise to treat her well, should she prove suitable. It was a trap. A beautiful, perfect trap. If I refused, my family would suffer. Lily would be cast out, or worse. And Theron would remain in that cage forever, because Aldrich would make sure no one else ever got close enough to ask the riddle. If I agreed, I'd betray Theron's trust, become the king's creature, help him manipulate his own brother for what? Sport? Control? Some twisted game of power? Why? I asked, stalling for time. If you want the curse broken, why not just let me do it? Why turn this into a game? Because it is a game, Aldrich said simply. Theron always thought himself superior, more moral, more righteous, more worthy of love. He sacrificed himself for some diplomat's daughter, and expected to be celebrated for it. Expected me to throw away an alliance, risk war, all because he couldn't control his base urges. His voice hardened, so I taught him a lesson. I showed him what happens when you put personal desires above pack needs. You cursed your own brother out of spite? I cursed him to teach him wisdom. Aldrich leaned forward, hands flat on his desk. And now, 5 years later, he's about to learn the final lesson that trust is a weakness, that love is a weapon, that even his precious salvation comes with strings attached. Understanding crashed over me like ice water. You want me to break his heart. I want you to show him the truth, that the girl he's grown to care for, the one bright spot in his darkness, was working for me all along. Aldrich's smile was poison. Imagine it, he answers the riddle a third time, the curse breaks, he's free to choose his form, and then you tell him the truth. That every conversation, every story, every moment of connection was a lie. That I orchestrated it all. That's monstrous. That's justice. He pushed the contract toward me. Sign it, or watch your family be destroyed. Your choice. My hands were shaking. My mind was racing. Everything in me screamed to refuse, to spit in this cruel king's face, to run back to the dungeon and warn Theron about what his brother had planned. But if I did that, Lily would pay the price. My father would lose everything, and I'd still be trapped here for 7 years, with no power, no leverage, nothing but my rage. At least if I signed the contract, I could protect my family. At least I'd have time to think, to plan, to find a way out of this nightmare. At least I could warn Theron before it was too late. If I sign, I said slowly, what exactly do you want me to report? Everything. His moods, his words, his reactions to your presence. Whether he speaks of escape, rebellion, revenge. Aldrich tapped the contract. And most importantly, what he plans to choose when the curse breaks. Full beast or no beast. Monster or man. I need to know which version of my brother will emerge from that cage. So you can prepare to destroy him either way. So I can protect my pack, Aldrich corrected coldly. Theron is dangerous. Always has been. Too idealistic. Too willing to sacrifice stability for sentiment. If he chooses to remain a beast, he'll be a weapon I can control or eliminate. If he chooses to lose his wolf entirely, he'll be vulnerable, harmless, easy to exile. He straightened. Either way, I win. The question is whether you'll be part of that victory, or crushed beneath it. I looked at the contract, at the elegant script promising my family's freedom in exchange for my soul. Then I looked at the king, and I saw what Theron must have seen 5 years ago, a man who viewed people as pieces in a game, who would sacrifice anything and anyone to maintain control, a man who needed to be stopped. I'll sign, I said. Triumph flashed in Aldrich's eyes. Excellent decision. I picked up the offered quill, dipped it in ink, and signed my name at the bottom of the contract. The moment the ink touched parchment, I felt something shift, like a thread being tied around my soul. There, Aldrich said with satisfaction, rolling up the scroll. Welcome to my service, Miss Ashwood. Your first report is due tomorrow evening. Don't disappoint me. He dismissed me with a wave, already turning back to his other documents. I walked out of that office in a daze. Helena was waiting in the corridor, her face carefully blank. "It's done?" she asked. "It's done," I confirmed. She nodded, unsurprised. "Then you understand now. Why we don't get attached. Why we don't care." Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. "The king always wins, Sarah. Always. The sooner you accept that, the easier it becomes." But I wasn't going to accept it. Couldn't accept it. Because somewhere in the past 2 weeks, I'd stopped being the broken, invisible girl who let the world happen to her. I'd started being someone who asked questions, who told stories, who fought back in the only ways she knew how. And I'd made a promise, though I'd never spoken it aloud to the beast in the cage. "I won't abandon you." So as I walked back down to the dungeon, as the marble gave way to stone and the golden light faded to blue flame, I began to plan. The king wanted me to betray Theron, to break his heart and his hope and his trust. But what if I could do the opposite? What if I could use this position, this terrible, coerced position, to actually help him? The king had made one critical mistake. He'd assumed I was weak. That being wolfless meant being powerless. That having no claws or fur meant having no teeth. He'd forgotten that humans had survived for millennia by being clever instead of strong. By using words and wit and will instead of brute force. He'd forgotten that the most dangerous weapon isn't a claw. It's a story told well enough to change someone's mind. Theron was waiting when I entered his chamber. He took one look at my face and his expression darkened. "What happened?" he demanded. "You were gone for hours," I thought. "The king summoned me," I said, and watched his whole body go rigid. "Aldrich." He spat the name like a curse. What did he want? To warn me away from you. To tell me I was wasting my time trying to break your curse. The lie came easily, too easily. He said you were dangerous. That I should stop talking to you, stop asking questions, stop caring. And what did you say? Theron's voice was tight, with barely controlled emotion. I met his amber eyes and told him a truth wrapped in deception. I told him no one controls who I care about, not him, not anyone. Relief flooded Theron's face. You stood up to him? For me? For both of us. I moved closer to the cage, dropping my voice, even though I knew the king's spies were probably listening. Theron, your brother doesn't want you freed. He wants you broken. Whatever this curse is, whatever choice you're supposed to make, he's going to try to poison it. And, I know. Theron's voice was bleak. I've known from the beginning that Aldrich would never let me go easily. But Sarah, if he's threatened you, he hasn't. Not really. He just wanted to scare me. Another lie, smooth as silk. But it didn't work. I'm still here. I'm still asking the riddle. I took a breath. Unless you want me to stop. If this is too dangerous, if I'm putting you at risk, don't stop, Theron said fiercely. Please. Sarah, you're the only chance I have. The only real thing in this nightmare. He pressed his palms against the silver bars, ignoring the way they burned. Ask me the riddle a third time. Tonight. Now. Before Aldrich finds another way to interfere. Are you sure? The curse reaction last time. I'm sure. I've been thinking about the answer. About what it means. About what I'll choose when the time comes. His eyes blazed with determination. I'm ready. Are you? Was I? Could I ask the riddle a third time, knowing that the king was listening, that every word would be reported back, that I was part of a trap I was desperately trying to dismantle from the inside? But looking at Theron, at his hope, his trust, his desperate need for freedom, I knew I had no choice. I had to try. I'm ready, I said, and for the third time, I spoke the ancient riddle into the darkness. What is more powerful than fate, more binding than a mate bond, more enduring than life itself? It can be given but never taken. It can be broken but never destroyed. It weighs nothing but carries everything. What is it? The air shattered like glass. If you're rooting for Sarah to outsmart the king and save Theron, smash that like button right now. And comment below. Team Beast or Team Human? What should Theron choose? Your answer might surprise you by the end. Chapter 6. The Breaking Point. The torches exploded into white flame. The runes on the silver bars ignited, all of them at once, blazing so bright I had to shield my eyes. The chamber filled with a sound like wind, and bells, and something deeper, older, like the voice of the earth itself, waking, and Theron screamed. Not in pain this time, in transformation. His body convulsed, muscles rippling, bones cracking and reforming. The beast form wavered, flickered, like reality couldn't decide what he was supposed to be. Theron! I lunged for the bars without thinking, reaching for him even though I knew I couldn't help, even though touching silver would burn me too. Don't, he gasped out. The answer, I have to. His voice broke into something between a howl and a roar. The curse was fighting him, fighting the breaking, fighting everything, but Theron fought back. A promise! He shouted into the maelstrom of magic and light. The answer is a promise. It's always been a promise. For one endless moment, nothing happened. Then the silver bars of his cage shattered. Not bent, not broken. Shattered, exploding outward in 1,000 glittering fragments that dissolved into light before they could hit the ground. The runes flared one final time, and went dark. The torches returned to their normal blue flame, and Theron collapsed onto the stone floor, free of his cage for the first time in 5 years. But he was still the beast, still trapped between forms, still covered in midnight fur, still cursed. No, he whispered, staring at his clawed hands. No, it should have, the curse should be broken. Maybe it is, I said, kneeling beside him, not caring about propriety or danger or anything except the fact that he was out. Maybe this is the choice. Maybe you're free to decide what form you take. Then why am I still? He broke off, understanding dawning in his amber eyes. I have to choose. Consciously. Deliberately. The curse gave me the power to choose, but the choice itself is mine. He stood, shaky but determined, and I stood with him. Around us, the chamber felt different, larger, somehow, now that the cage wasn't dominating the space, empty in a way that was both liberating and terrifying. Full beast, Theron said slowly, means keeping my strength, my senses, my connection to the wolf, but losing my humanity bit by bit, becoming more animal than man, until the thinking part of me fades entirely. And no beast? I asked, means becoming fully human, losing the wolf forever, losing the strength, the healing, the pack bond, everything that makes me shifter. He looked at his clawed hands, becoming vulnerable, mortal, ordinary. Ordinary isn't a curse, I said quietly. Trust me, I know. He smiled at that, sad and fond. You're not ordinary, Sarah. You never were. He took a breath. But you're right. Being human isn't weakness. It's just different. A different kind of power. So what will you choose? Before he could answer, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Multiple sets, moving fast. And then Beta Garrett burst into the chamber with 6 guards behind him, all armed, all ready for violence. The prisoner has escaped, Garrett announced unnecessarily, his eyes taking in the destroyed cage, the freed beast, me standing far too close to both. I haven't escaped, Theron said, his voice carrying authority I'd never heard from him before. The curse broke. I answered the riddle. I'm free. Free to be recaptured, Garrett corrected. He gestured to the guards. Restrain him. Silver chains. The king wants him in the high tower until he can be properly assessed. Assessed? I stepped between Theron and the guards without thinking. He's not a threat. He's been cursed for 5 years, and now he's a beast who broke free of his cage, Garrett interrupted coldly. And you're a servant who's forgotten her place. Step aside, girl, or be charged with aiding a prisoner. Theron's hand landed on my shoulder, careful, despite the claws. Sarah, don't. This fight isn't yours. Yes, it is, I said fiercely. Everything the king does to you is my fight now. Something shifted in Theron's expression, understanding, maybe, or the beginning of it. But before he could speak, the guards moved forward with their silver chains. Theron could have fought, even in his current form, even weakened from the curse breaking. He was stronger than any 3 of them. He could have torn them apart, destroyed them, fled into the castle or the forest beyond. But he didn't. He stood still and let them chain him, let them wrap silver around his wrists and neck. Let them burn him again, just like the cage had burned him, because fighting would have meant violence, would have meant proving Aldrich right that he was dangerous, uncontrolled, a beast that needed caging. "Take him to the tower," Garrett ordered. Then, to me, "You're to report to the king immediately." They dragged Theron away, and I watched him go, my heart breaking and my mind racing because everything was falling apart faster than I could fix it. The king was waiting in his study, exactly as I'd left him hours earlier, except now he was smiling. "The curse broke," he said without preamble. "Impressive. You actually managed it." "You knew it would work," I accused. "You wanted it to work." "I suspected. There's a difference." He gestured to a chair. "Sit. We need to discuss your brother's situation." "He's not in a situation. He's free. The curse is broken." "The curse is changed," Aldrich corrected. "He's still trapped between forms, still dangerous, still in need of containment while we determine his stability." He poured himself wine, didn't offer me any. "Which brings us to your next assignment." When in his mind, dread settled in my stomach. What assignment? "My brother will be held in the North Tower comfortable quarters, but locked and guarded. You'll be allowed to visit him, to talk to him, to continue this friendship you've developed." Aldrich's smile was razors. "And you'll convince him to choose the full beast form." I stared at him. "What? Why would I?" "Because if he chooses to become fully human, he loses all value to me. He becomes just another wolfless failure like you with no strength, no pack bond, nothing I can use." The king's voice hardened. "But if he chooses to remain the beast, he becomes a weapon, one I can control, aim, unleash as needed. He'll be powerful but mindless. Perfect. You want me to convince him to destroy himself. I want you to convince him to accept his nature. There's a difference." Aldrich set down his wine glass with a sharp click. "You have 1 week, Miss Ashwood. 1 week to persuade Theron that keeping his beast is the right choice. If you succeed, your family's debt is forgiven as promised. If you fail—" He let the threat hang. "And if I refuse?" I asked, though I knew the answer. "Then I'll be forced to make the choice for him. A quick execution, burial in an unmarked grave, and we all move on with our lives. Would you prefer that outcome?" "No. God, no." But the alternative, manipulating Theron into choosing a fate worse than death, was unbearable. "I need time to think," I said. "You have until morning, then you start visiting the tower." Aldrich waved me away. Dismissed. I didn't go back to the servants' quarters. Instead, I climbed. Up and up through the castle's winding staircases, past sleeping guards and empty corridors, until I reached a small balcony that overlooked the forest. The moon was full, huge, and silver, and mocking. Somewhere out there, wolves were running, hunting, living the life I'd never have, the life Theron might lose forever. "This is an interesting place for a servant to be," a voice said behind me. I spun. A woman stood in the doorway, beautiful, elegant, wearing a dress that cost more than my family's cottage. Her eyes were the pale blue of ice, and her smile was almost kind. "I'm sorry," I said quickly. "I didn't mean to trespass. I just needed air, space, a moment to think without walls closing in." The woman stepped onto the balcony. "I understand. I'm Mira, by the way, the king's diplomat." My blood froze. Mira. The woman Theron had sacrificed everything for. The one he'd loved enough to accept a curse. She was here. In the castle. "You know who I am," Mira said, reading my expression. "Theron told you about me. He said you were married to another Pax Alpha." "I was. He died last year. Hunting accident." Her tone suggested it might not have been an accident, which is why I'm here to renegotiate the alliance Theron's sacrifice was meant to preserve. She moved to the balcony edge, looking out at the forest. "I heard his curse broke tonight. That you're the one who asked the riddle. How did you—" "The castle has ears, and I make it my business to know things." She glanced at me. "The king wants you to manipulate Theron into choosing the beast form. To stay cursed forever, essentially." I said nothing, which was answer enough. "You care about him," Mira continued. "I can see it. The way you flinched when I said his name. The way you're standing here in the moonlight, trying to figure out how to save him. She smiled sadly. I cared about him too. Once. Loved him, even. But not enough to sacrifice what he did. Then why are you telling me this? Because I owe him a debt. He gave up everything for me, and I let him. I was young and scared and selfish, and I let the man I loved be cursed rather than fight for him. She turned to face me fully. So I'm going to give you something I should have given him 5 years ago. Information. She pulled a small scroll from her sleeve. The witch who cursed Theron, I found her. Paid her to explain the full terms of the curse. Mira held out the scroll. The choice he has to make isn't really a choice at all. It's a test. A test of what? Of whether he values strength or connection. Beast or humanity. Power or love. Mira pressed the scroll into my hands. The curse was designed to break him. Yes, but also to reveal his truest self. Whatever he chooses will define him for the rest of his life. I unrolled the scroll with shaking hands. The text was written in an old script, barely readable, but I made out enough. The cursed one must choose between 2 forms, beast eternal or human complete. But the choice cannot be made in isolation. It must be witnessed by the one who asked the riddle 3 times. And that witness must speak truth, either affirming the choice or denying it. Only when both cursed and witness agree can the transformation complete. I looked up at Mira, understanding dawning. I have to approve his choice. If I don't, the curse stays. Exactly. Which means the king can't force Theron to choose the beast form. He can only manipulate you into approving it. Mira's smile was sharp. That's leverage, Sarah. Use it. Why are you helping me? You barely know me. Because you're doing what I couldn't. Fighting for him, staying when it would be easier to leave. She turned to go, then paused. And because the king deserves to lose. He's cruel and controlling and everything wrong with our world. If you can take away even one of his victories, you should. She left me alone on the balcony with the scroll in the moonlight, and a plan forming in my mind like frost on glass. The king wanted me to manipulate Theron, to convince him to choose beast over man. But what if I did the opposite? What if I helped him choose humanity, complete, total, permanent humanity? Aldrich would lose his weapon. Theron would lose his wolf. But he'd gain something more important. Freedom. True freedom. Not just from the curse, but from his brother's control. And I would lose. What? My family's security? My own safety? Maybe. Probably. But standing there in the moonlight, holding proof that I had more power than the king realized, I made a choice of my own. I wasn't going to be Aldrich's puppet. I wasn't going to be the weapon he used to destroy his brother. I was going to be something he'd never planned for. I was going to be the truth that broke his game apart, even if it destroyed me in the process. Chapter 7. The Choice. They let me see Theron the next morning. The North Tower was everything the dungeon wasn't. Sunlight streaming through tall windows, soft carpets on the floor, a proper bed instead of stone. But the silver bars on the windows and the locked door told the real story. This was still a cage. Just a prettier one. Theron stood at the window when I entered, his back to me, his beast form silhouetted against the dawn light. The guard locked the door behind me with a sharp click. They told me you'd come, Theron said without turning. The king's spy, here to manipulate me into choosing the beast. My heart stopped. How did you? I'm not stupid, Sarah. He finally turned, and his eyes were full of hurt and anger, and something that looked like betrayal. Did you think I wouldn't figure it out? The way you conveniently appeared in my dungeon? The way you asked the exact riddle that could break my curse? The way everything happened exactly when and how Aldrich would want it to? Theron, please let me explain. Explain what? That you've been working for him the whole time? That every story, every conversation, every moment I thought was real was actually part of his plan? His voice cracked. I trusted you. I told you things I've never told anyone. I thought... He cut himself off, shaking his head. It doesn't matter what I thought. It matters to me. I moved closer, even though he flinched away. Yes, the king made me sign a contract. Yes, he wanted me to spy on you. But everything else, everything I said, everything I felt that was real. How can I believe that? Because I'm here to tell you the truth. even though it will destroy me. I pulled out Mira's scroll, holding it up. Your curse isn't what you think it is, and I'm not who the king thinks I am. Slowly, carefully, I explained everything. The king's contract, Mira's information, the fact that I had to approve his choice for the transformation to complete, the leverage I didn't know I had until last night. Theron listened in silence, his expression unreadable. So the king wants you to approve the beast form, he said when I finished, to turn me into his weapon. Yes, but I'm not going to do that. Why not? Your family's debt can stay unpaid. The words came out stronger than I felt. I'm not going to manipulate you into destroying yourself, Theron. I don't care what it costs me. He stared at me for a long moment. You mean that? I do. Even though refusing the king will put your family at risk, even though you'll be punished, even though, I took a breath. You sacrificed everything for someone you loved. Let me do the same. His ears flattened. You love me? The question hung in the air between us. Impossible and obvious and terrifying all at once. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe. Or maybe I just recognize someone as broken as I am, and can't stand to watch them break further. I moved to the window, looking out at the forest below. But I know this. You deserve to choose your own fate, not the one the king wants, not the one the curse demands. Yours. Silence stretched between us. Then Theron said quietly, if I choose to become fully human, I lose everything that makes me strong. I become like you, wolfless, vulnerable, powerless in a world designed for predators. Yes, and if I choose to stay the beast, I keep my strength but lose my mind. I become exactly what Aldrich wants, a weapon without will. Yes. So either way, I lose. He laughed bitterly. Some choice. There's a third option, I said slowly, an idea forming. What if you don't choose at all? He turned to me. What? The curse says you have to choose between two forms, beast eternal or human complete. But what if you refuse? What if you stay exactly as you are right now, caught between both, and just live with it? That's not possible. The curse will force a choice eventually. Only if I approve it. That's what Mira's scroll says. You choose, I approve, then the transformation completes. I met his eyes. But if I don't approve either choice, you stay like this. Forever trapped between forms, yes, but also forever free from becoming what the king wants. Understanding dawned in his amber eyes. That's not freedom, that's just a different cage. Maybe, but it's a cage you choose yourself, and sometimes that makes all the difference. I moved closer. I've spent 7 years being wolfless in a world that values nothing else. It's been hard and painful and lonely. But it's also made me who I am, someone who survives, someone who finds strength in different places, someone who refuses to let the world define her worth. You're saying I should embrace being broken? I'm saying you should embrace being between, neither fully beast nor fully man, but something new, something the world doesn't have a box for. My voice softened. Something like me. Theron was quiet for a long time, his clawed hand reaching up to touch the window glass. Outside, birds were flying free and wild and uncaged. If I do this, he said slowly, if I refuse to choose and stay in this form, what happens to you? The king will know you didn't complete his assignment. I'll figure it out. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. I touched his arm, fur and muscle and warmth. Theron, I can't promise I can protect you from your brother. I can't promise this will all work out perfectly. But I can promise that whatever you decide, I'll stand by it. I'll stand by you. He turned to face me fully, and in his beast's face, I saw something achingly human, hope and fear and desperate, fragile trust. You'd really do that? Risk everything for a beast who can't even shift properly? You did it for Mira. I can do it for you. That was different. I loved her. And I stopped, the words catching in my throat. Then I forced them out, terrified and certain all at once. And I care about you. Maybe not love, not yet, but something that could become love, given time. The silence that followed felt like the moment before a storm breaks. Then Theron reached out with one clawed hand and carefully, so carefully, touched my face. 7 years ago, I made a choice that destroyed my life. I chose love over duty, passion over sense, one person's happiness over the good of many. His voice was rough. Everyone said I was wrong, selfish, a fool. You weren't. Let me finish. His thumb brushed my cheek, gentle despite the claw. Standing here now, looking at you, I realized something. I wasn't wrong to choose love. I was wrong to accept punishment for it. I was wrong to let them tell me that caring about someone was a crime. He pulled his hand back. So, I'm not going to choose beast or human. I'm going to choose this being trapped between being broken, being exactly what I am, and I'm going to stop apologizing for it. Relief flooded through me so intensely I almost collapsed. You're sure? I'm sure, if you'll approve it, if you'll be my witness and tell the curse that this form, this life, this choice is good enough. I thought about the scroll's words. The witness must speak truth, either affirming the choice or denying it. Truth. Not manipulation, not strategy, just truth. Theron, I said clearly, loudly, speaking to him and the curse and the universe itself. I approve your choice. I affirm that you should remain exactly as you are between beast and human, trapped and free, broken and whole all at once. This is your truth. This is your choice, and it's enough. The air shimmered. The curse mark on Theron's chest, a rune I'd never noticed before, hidden under his fur, flared bright gold. Once, twice, 3 times. Then it faded, but didn't disappear. It settled into his skin like a tattoo, permanent but no longer painful. It's done. Theron breathed. The curse is not broken, but finished. Complete. I'm free to be this forever. How do you feel? He flexed his clawed hands, rolled his shoulders, testing his body like it was new. Strange, the same but different. Like something that was pulling at me, trying to force me one direction or another, has finally let go. He looked at me, wonder in his eyes. I'm not getting worse, not becoming more beast, not losing my mind, and not becoming human either. No, but maybe that's all right. He smiled or tried to, his muzzle making it difficult. Maybe being in between is its own kind of perfect. The tower door slammed open. King Aldrich stood in the doorway, Beta Garrett and 6 guards behind him. His face was a mask of cold fury. What? He said with dangerous calm. Have you done? Chapter 8. The Reckoning. I fulfilled my contract, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the terror flooding my veins. I convinced Theron to make a choice about his form. The curse is complete. Complete? Aldrich's voice was soft, deadly. The curse was supposed to give me a weapon or eliminate a threat. Instead, you've helped him become this. He gestured at Theron with disgust. Still dangerous, still defiant, still aware. Still your brother, Theron said, stepping forward. Even trapped between forms, he moved with authority, with the bearing of someone who'd once been royalty. Tell me, Aldrich was destroying me really worth 5 years of cruelty? Worth terrorizing a girl who'd done nothing wrong? Worth breaking every bond of family and blood? You broke those bonds when you chose a diplomat's daughter over your pack, Aldrich snarled. When you put your pathetic feelings over duty. I chose love over politics, Theron interrupted. I chose a person over a treaty. And yes, it cost me everything. But standing here now, I'd make the same choice again. His amber eyes blazed. Because the alternative is becoming you cold and cruel, and so afraid of losing control that you destroy anyone who dares to feel something real. Aldrich's face went white with rage. Guards, seize them both. The guards moved forward, weapons drawn, and Theron growled. It wasn't a human sound, wasn't a wolf sound either. It was something between deep and resonant, and wrong in a way that made every guard freeze mid-step. The sound of something that had been caged for 5 years, and was done being afraid. Touch her, Theron said quietly, and I'll show you exactly how dangerous this form can be. You wouldn't, Aldrich said, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. You'd be killing pack members, your own people. They stopped being my people when they let you curse me. when they stood by while you broke me for sport." Theron moved to stand beside me, his clawed hand finding mine, but she stayed. She fought. She saw me as a person when everyone else saw a monster. His grip tightened. "So yes, brother, I would absolutely kill for her. Try me." The standoff stretched, tense and terrible. Then a new voice cut through the silence. "That won't be necessary." Mira stepped into the room, and she wasn't alone. Behind her stood 3 people in formal robes. Elders, I realized. Pack elders, the ones who made the laws that even kings had to follow. "Lady Mira," Aldrich said, his tone shifting to diplomatic smoothness. "This is a private family matter." "This is a matter of pack law," Mira corrected. She held up a scroll, not the one she'd given me, a different one. "Official. Sealed. I've brought a formal complaint before the elders. You cursed your brother using illegal magic, imprisoned him without trial, and manipulated a wolfless human into service through coercion and debt bondage." Her smile was ice. "All violations of the Accord of 1847, which, as I'm sure you remember, you signed personally when you became king." Aldrich's face went through several expressions: shock, fury, calculation before settling on cold indifference. "Those are serious accusations. You'd need proof." "We have proof," one of the elders said, an old woman, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Lady Mira has provided documentation of the witch's contract. Miss Ashwood has provided testimony of your coercion, and your own guards have confirmed that Prince Theron was held in inhumane conditions for 5 years without formal charges. He was dangerous. He was cursed," the elder corrected, "which you arranged, which makes you responsible for his imprisonment, not justified by it." She looked at Theron, her expression softening slightly. "Prince Theron, the elders formally recognize that you were wrongfully imprisoned. Your curse was unjust, your treatment unlawful. We cannot undo what was done, but we can offer reparation." "I don't want reparation," Theron said. "I want justice, and I want assurance that my brother can never do this to anyone else." The 3 elders looked at each other. Some silent communication passed between them. "King Aldrich," the silver-haired elder said formally, "you are hereby censured by the Pack Council. Your authority to imprison without trial is revoked. Your use of magical punishment is forbidden. And you will pay restitution to both Prince Theron and Miss Ashwood for the harm you've caused." "You can't," Aldrich started. "We can, and we have. The vote was unanimous." The elder's voice hardened. "Be grateful we're not stripping your title entirely. Several council members argued for it." I expected Aldrich to explode, to rage and threaten and fight back with all the cruelty I'd seen in his study. Instead, he laughed. It was a cold, bitter sound that made my skin crawl. "Well played," he said, looking at Mira. "You've been planning this since you arrived, haven't you? Using your diplomatic immunity to investigate, gathering evidence, waiting for the perfect moment to strike." His smile was poisonous. "I underestimated you." "You underestimated all of us," Mira corrected. "You thought being king meant being untouchable. You forgot that power comes with accountability." She glanced at me and Theron. "And you definitely underestimated a wolfless girl and a cursed prince." Aldrich's eyes met mine, and the hatred there was palpable. "Your family's debt is still unpaid, Miss Ashwood. The censure doesn't change that." "Actually," the elder said, "it does. Debts incurred through coercion are void under Pack law. The Ashwood family owes you nothing." She consulted her scroll. "Furthermore, you owe Miss Ashwood compensation for 2 weeks of forced labor. We've calculated it at, let's see, 1,400 silver marks should cover it. The exact amount of my family's debt." The universe had a sense of irony. Aldrich looked like he wanted to argue, but the elder's expressions made it clear that ship had sailed. He turned on his heel and left. Beta Garrett and the guards scrambling to follow. The tower felt different with him gone lighter, like a weight had been lifted from the air itself. "Thank you," Theron said to Mira and the elders. "All of you. I don't know how to repay." "No repayment necessary," the silver-haired elder said. "Justice isn't a transaction, Prince Theron. It's a responsibility." She looked at me then, really looked, and I saw something like respect in her ancient eyes. "You're an interesting young woman, Miss Ashwood. Wolfless, yet you've brought down a king's cruelty through nothing but courage and cleverness. The pack could use more people like you." "I'm not pack," I said automatically. "Perhaps you should be." The elder smiled. "We'll discuss it later. For now, you're both free to go. Live your lives. Make your choices. The curse is broken or completed, as the case may be, and you owe no one anything." The elders filed out, leaving just me, Theron, and Mira in the tower room. "Why did you do all this?" Theron asked Mira. "You could have left well enough alone. Could have avoided making an enemy of my brother." "Because I owed you," Mira said simply. "And because watching you take that curse for me was the worst moment of my life. I've carried that guilt for 5 years." She moved to the window, looking out. "I can't undo what happened, can't give you back those years, but I could give you this freedom, justice, a chance to start over." She glanced back at us. "Don't waste it." She left, and then it was just the two of us, Theron and me, beast and human, broken and whole and everything in between. "So," Theron said after a moment, "what do we do now?" I thought about it. About the cottage on the edge of pack territory that was now truly mine. About the library full of stories I'd always wanted to read. About the forest paths I'd walked alone for 7 years. About how none of those things sounded good, unless they included the beast standing beside me. "We live," I said. "We find a place that's ours, not the king's, not the pack's, just ours. We figure out what it means to be between things in a world that demands you choose sides." I took his clawed hand in mine. "And we prove that broken doesn't mean worthless. That different doesn't mean wrong. That two people who don't fit anywhere else can make their own place to belong." Theron's smile was crooked, half human, half beast, entirely genuine. "That sounds perfect. It sounds terrifying. That too." He squeezed my hand gently. "But we've survived worse, haven't we? You survived 7 years as the pack's disappointment. I survived 5 years in a cage. Together, we can survive anything. Even happiness?" I asked. "Especially happiness." He pulled me closer, careful of his claws, mindful of his strength. "You know what the riddle taught me? What promises really are." "What?" "They're not about being strong enough to keep them. They're about caring enough to try, even when it's hard, even when it costs everything." His amber eyes held mine. "I promise to try, Sarah Ashwood. To build a life with you. To be whatever I am, beast, man, or something between, and let that be enough." "I promise to try too," I whispered. "To stop hiding, to stop being invisible, to take up space in the world and make people see me." I smiled. "And to tell you terrible jokes until you learn to appreciate them." "My jokes aren't terrible. Your jokes are objectively terrible. You're impossible, and you're stuck with me." He laughed, then real laughter, warm and free and full of something that might, given time, become love. We left the tower hand in hand, walking down into a future neither of us had planned, but both of us were brave enough to try. Behind us, the cage stood empty. The curse was complete. The king was defeated. And ahead of us stretched possibility, terrifying, uncertain, beautiful possibility. For 7 years, I'd been told I was broken because I couldn't shift. For 5 years, Theron had been told he was a monster because he wouldn't stop loving. Together, we were going to prove that being broken and monstrous, and caught between worlds, was just another way of being whole. Epilogue. 6 months later. The cottage sat at the edge of the forest, far enough from pack territory to be free, but close enough to visit if needed. It was small, just 2 rooms and a garden, but it was ours. I was tending the garden when I heard him approach, his footsteps now as familiar as my own heartbeat. "Letter from Mira," Theron said, holding up an envelope. His clawed hand still struggled with delicate tasks, but he managed. "She's been appointed chief diplomat for the Western Territories. Wants to know if we'll visit for the inaugural celebration." "Will we?" I asked, standing and brushing dirt from my hands. "Do you want to?" I considered. 6 months ago, the thought of attending any pack function would have terrified me. But things were different now. I was different. "Yes," I said. I think we should. It'll be good to see her. Good to show the pack that we're thriving despite everything they said was impossible." Theron smiled. He'd gotten better at it. Learned how to make his beast's face express the warmth inside. "You're getting bold in your old age. I'm 25. Ancient, practically withered." I threw a dirt clod at him. He caught it easily, laughing. "There's more news," he said, his tone shifting to something more serious. "The elders want me to take a position on the pack council, representing the in-between, the ones who don't fit the normal categories." My heart swelled. "Theron, that's amazing. I haven't accepted yet. It would mean spending time in the capital, dealing with Aldrich, even if his power is limited now." He looked at me carefully. "It would mean both of us dealing with the pack more. I won't do it unless you're comfortable." 6 months ago, I would have said no immediately. Would have chosen safety over risk, invisibility over exposure. But 6 months of building this life with Theron had taught me something. Hiding was another kind of cage, and I was done with cages. "Accept it," I said firmly. "The pack needs voices like yours. Needs to see that being different isn't a weakness. Besides," I grinned, "I've been thinking about starting a school, teaching the Wolfless and the in-between and anyone else who doesn't fit. Showing them they're not alone." Theron's eyes blazed with pride and something deeper. "You're extraordinary, you know that." "I'm just me." "Exactly." He pulled me close, and we stood there in our garden, 2 broken things that had somehow made each other whole. Behind us, the cottage waited, filled with books and stories and laughter. Before us, the forest stretched wild and beautiful, and full of possibility. And between those 2 worlds, we'd found our place. Not beast. Not human. Not powerful or perfect or anything the world said we should be. Just us. And that was more than enough. That was everything.